Most of, let me give you a little secret about most teachers. Oh! Teachers are just like adults, like living their lives. Mostly, like if you think a teacher in high school has like a vendetta against you, I think there's like a 5% chance that you're right. And a 95% chance that you have just made them into a mortal enemy for no reason. And as soon as they go home, they turn on Survivor, and they forget that you exist. They're literally just like, oh, thank God my workday's done, so I can like spend 3 hours tonight reading 30 essays on the same thing and then have like a glass of white wine and go to bed. But the students are like, oh, Mrs. Robertson, here's to you, Mrs. Robertson. You're my mortal enemy, you know. Like, it's just the same thing. Like, even when I taught ESL, I would have like 8-year-old kids that like every time I walked into the class, they were like, I'm gonna like, it's me versus you. And I'm like, kid, I don't even care like who you are. I'm never gonna see you again after 2011. Are you crazy? Like, life's too short to get, you know, involved in these weird petty vendettas. I actually have like no clue like what your home life looks like at all. Like I see you for an hour 3 times a week. It's not that serious. Can you just say I'm fine, thank you, and you, so we can both like get a gold check mark on our report cards? Overall, did your students like you? Young students, like, you know, kindergarten to grade 3, grade 4, not really. Older students, grade 6 and up, yeah, I would say. I'm not a good like early childhood educator, because I have a deep voice. I don't have that kind of demeanor that like little kids really like. I'm a lot better at it now because obviously like I have my own child. But prior to having my own child, I mean, I'm not an enthusiastic guy. Holy cow! I love tail tag. I hate tail tag. Get me out of here. 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 I grabbed him. He got up in a second and was like, I'll take it back. But like especially once the kids had like a good grasp of English. I mean, I was a completely acceptable teacher if like you're 12 years old or older and just were like, as long as you can have a shared idea with the kid that is like, we're both in here to spend 50 minutes in the class, do what we need to do and then get the hell out of here, then it was no problem. But when you got kids that are like 8 years old, I don't even blame like the 8-year-olds because they're 8. But like they're a little crazy, right? Like they're running around the damn classroom. You get like impulses as an 8-year-old. You'll just be like doing your work and then you'll like punch a kid in the shoulder just to like, you're like, my brain told me to. I'm not good at that stuff. Or at least I wasn't good at that stuff 10 years ago when I was like 21 or 22. But now that I, like, you know, have a child, you have to get good at it. But you don't have to get good. Like, to be a good teacher without having any experience as a teacher, I had to get good at that shit in, like, a day. You walk into the classroom and they're like, you gotta figure this shit out immediately. As a parent, you learn it day by day, you know? It's like programming. You break a big problem down into smaller chunks. How many kids do you send to the principal? I don't know. I probably sent like 1 kid a month to the principal. Sometimes it's just got to be done. I didn't do it for pleasure. Because like when you send a kid to the principal, it reflects poorly on your own ability to manage the class as a teacher. But there's some times where a kid would just like kind of lose their mind and you would be like, well, the only thing you respect is if like somebody is going to tell your parents that you're not behaving in school. So guess what? I'm not calling your parents because, again, we don't have a common language. So I got to send you to the damn principal's office so that she can call your parents. There's a lot of stuff that, like, the education system at the school that I worked at needed, I think it needed a philosophical change. There was no reason that I should have, like, we used to have, like, an hour lunch break, and I worked 3 to 10, so my lunch break was at, like, 8 p.m., Then, like halfway through my tenure, they changed it to a 20-minute lunch break, and I had to spend the 40 minutes that I previously had as a lunch break calling children that had class with me earlier that day and being like, you know, I'd call up like a 40-year-old Korean lady and be like, hello, is Jenny there? And then wait like a minute to figure, they're like, who's this guy calling my little child? And then I'd be like, I'm from the school. And then I'd hear like, hi, Ryan, teacher. Hi, Jenny. Have you eaten dinner? Yes. What did you have for dinner tonight? and then just like hear Korean like whispering in the background, and then like a second later I hear like pig meat, and I'm like, oh, that's called pork, and she's like, yes, Ryan. Like this information is just like never gonna stick in her brain. Just an extreme waste of everybody's time. Also, why the hell you got like your 8-year-old Korean kid like at 8 p.m. receiving phone calls for English lessons? Like they don't have enough shit to do on top of like all the other schooling that they're in. Like they can't have 5 minutes to just like be a kid. Anybody who's worked in like the Hagwon experience will relate to this. No, most people don't know this. The hardest time, like the most stressful time to be a Korean student is not like near the end of high school when you apply for university. It's not near the end of university when you're going to be applying for jobs. It's actually when you're like 11 and 12. Because then you're leaving like the elementary school system. You have to qualify for like the best possible middle schools that then prepare you for high school, that then prepare you for university. But it's like, it's almost like when you're 11 and 12, if you make it through that, it's almost downhill from there. Like you got past the hardest part. Like I would talk to my students and I'd be like, what's your average night like? And they would be like, well, like I'm 12 years old and I go to bed at 1 a.m. And then I wake up at like 7 and I go to public school all day. I go home and eat like a snack and then I go to private schools all night. Then I go home at 8 and I do my homework from public school. And then I do my homework from the private school. Thanks for the grab, by the way. This is why we can't have nice things. And I'm like, you know, like, I mean, what do you want me to say? You're 12. That's crazy. That's more work than a 12-year-old should be doing, in my opinion. As much as I've made the case that, like, I do think, you know, at least my experience in the Canadian public system... Oh, I hit a fan, I see. My experience in the Canadian public school system is that, like, the kids could be doing more work. Not to be, like... I'm insane? Not to be malevolent, like, oh, those kids are having free time. But rather, like, just for their own, like, academic development, you could probably be doing a little bit more work when you're, like, 10 years old. Korea is, like, the opposite. Like, it's crazy. They got those kids working way too hard. Someone in chat also said they got, like, that's harder than anybody should work, and that's absolutely true. Nobody should be on, like, you know, 18 hours a day, but especially when you're, like, 11. Like, I mean, you're 11. The flip side is, and both Kate and Kate's sister echo this, because Kate's sister moved to Canada. She was like maybe 14 or 15, and Kate moved here when she was like 10. They were like, literally, I didn't have to do anything when I came to Canadian school, and I was the smartest kid in my class by like an order of magnitude. Just because Korean elementary school trains you to be in the fucking, you're in a damn cage match, and then you come to Canadian school and you're like, oh, you finish your like 6 times tables, here's a word search, you know, enjoy. My wife moved here at age 13, same experience, no doubt. I mean, like, it's, I don't want to say it's easy because like it's different for everybody, but it's definitely easier than like I mean, the Canadian public school. Like, some of my students in Korea, in, like, 6th grade, they were learning calculus. Not, like, advanced calculus, but we didn't even have a calculus class offered to us until we were in 12th grade. And then, like, I don't know if they actually did it, but at the last time I checked, they were talking about actually taking calculus off the curriculum. Which, for the record, I don't work as an educator, there might be a good reason for that. That maybe you learn it all in university anyway if you go to a science or a math-focused program. But, like, it definitely struck me as, like, 2 countries with very different philosophies on education. I remember I had a private lesson. Like, sometimes we would have classes at the school that were just, like, one-on-one. And it was, like, a 13-year-old kid that lived in New Zealand for, like, 6 years and then moved back to Korea. I was teaching him a lesson about World War II. I did a bunch of research about, like, Rommel and the campaign in North Africa to teach him the lesson. Like 5 minutes into the lesson, he was like, "Teacher, I know all this," and I was like, "Okay, I don't know." It's silly me. I didn't think the average 13-year-old would know that much about the North African campaign in the Second World War, but I guess, you know, they just. I mean, this is not the average 13-year-old.